Tuesday, January 10th, 2017, Monaco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. I like to talk about inequality, and particularly wealth inequality. There's a lot of talk these days in the UK and in the US how, the people at the top, the wealthy families and wealthy people are getting richer and richer, but the people at the bottom and the middle class is not, their earnings are not going up. If anything, I think earnings or wages are the same as they were 17 years ago in the States or so, something like that. And the reason I want to talk about this today is that the leader of the Labour Party, which is the opposition party in the UK, and they're considered like socialists. And before I get further, I don't want to, I just want to make clear that I'm not pro-Labour and I'm not pro-conservative, because I think both parties are, in my view, still very socialistic. Even the Conservative Party or the Tories, we still have a huge welfare state in the UK. We still have very high taxes, income taxes, VAT taxes, road taxes. We've got so many taxes. We have inheritance tax, that basically takes 40% of a person's wealth over a certain amount once that person dies, and the family has to pay 40%. So I'm not criticizing Labour, and I'm not praising the Conservatives. So there's a story today in the FT covering comments made by Jeremy Corbyn today, and he said, and I quote the story, Jeremy Corbyn backs cap on earnings to reduce inequality. And it's strange because back in the 80s, Margaret Thatcher, who tried to hamper, and kind of whittle down the welfare state, she was somewhat successful, but she didn't really probably do as much as she wanted. I remember her saying that, free market capitalists, they want, let's say there's inequality, right? They want everyone to go up, even though there might be inequality. They want everyone to earn more. But socialists, and she used this example in Parliament, she said socialists, they've got inequality. They want to bring everyone down, so that, they want, the people who are wealthy and, successful, they want to bring them down so that there isn't as much inequality. And I agree with her, it doesn't make sense. But nowadays, one of the major reasons, in my opinion, and it's not brought up too much in the mainstream media, in the mainstream economics profession, or none of the central banks talk about it because, they'd be shooting themselves in the foot, is fiat money. I think fiat money and debasement of the currency is one of the reasons why there is wealth inequality. Rich people, wealthier people, they have more ways of protecting their wealth. Well, first of all, they got more wealth and they earn more, so they can get advice, financial advice on how to, protect their wealth, getting out of cash and buying properties, or investing in fine art, or in commodities. They've got more income and more assets, and they can protect themselves against the debasement in the currency. And why do I say debasement? Because, in a fiat money system, the banks and the central banks, they can create money or credit out of thin air. It's not backed, it's not based on any real economic activity. They just, type it into their computer. I'm Ben Bernanke, I want to create $20 billion a month and buy US treasuries. So there's no, there's no anchor to the monetary system. So it's like the more of something you produce, the less value it has relative to other goods that can't be produced as easily. So money loses its value. But we're lied to. We're told that inflation nowadays is actually the CPI or the RPI in the UK. We're told that it's the government measure of prices, rising prices, which they always manipulate, and they tell us that it's around 1 or 2% right now. But in my opinion, that's totally bogus. Inflation, of course, the true classic definition of inflation is the creation of money, increasing the money supply out of thin air. That's inflation. So, yeah, poorer people, they're just struggling to pay their rent, if they don't have a house. Their wages don't keep up with rising prices because usually they're pegged to the government measures, and the government measures are always lying about the rising cost of living. So, for example, we are told these days that central banks have a target of 2% inflation or CPI. I say inflation, but it really isn't inflation. But let's, for all practical purposes, use their terms. So with a 2% inflation over 20 years, £100, for example, to have £100 relative to 20 years, you need almost £150. So you get 50% debasement. So you can see why the middle class is getting squeezed in the US. I think wages haven't gone up, are the same as they were 17 years ago. So, and then, for example, if we use 4%, which is probably the real debasement we're getting every year, from this fiat money banking system, £100 becomes 220. So you lose 100%, just over 100% of the value of the money is gone. You need twice as more to be twice as well off as you were 20 years ago with 4% CPI or inflation. The rich people, of course, they're able to protect themselves. Poor people, it's almost like you're going up onto a downward coming escalator. It's really hard, isn't it? You have to really push. Wealthier people kind of have an edge on that, and they're able to go up that escalator. Poorer people can't, because they get nothing left at the end of the month to save and protect. And if they do save, they're told by the mainstream economists or television programs that the best thing to do is to put your money in a bank and put it in a savings account where you get 1 or 2%. And so that's, in my opinion, why there's so much inequality these days, especially after 2008, when the central banks and the governments saved the big banks. And the big banks here in the UK, they're related to the financial, of course, sector, insurance, fund management. These people are doing as well as they've ever been, and they've kept rates at zero so they can borrow money for nothing, speculate with the money. They might lose sometimes, but they'll make it up the other time. Poorer people, they can't borrow at 0%. And the other point I'd like to make, if you go back to third world countries, let's say, for example, Brazil, where I grew up, never has had a tradition of sound money. Maybe only back in the 1800s, when Brazil still had an emperor before it became a republic. It had quite a sound gold and silver monetary system up until the 1870s or 1880s. But ever since it became a republic, inflation was always the way in Brazil, and it still is. And that's why there's so much inequality in Brazil. There's stories about how, you know, the rich are really rich in Brazil and the poor are really poor, and there's not much in between. But we've never had a sound money system like the US and, you know, the first world had basically until 1971. So the inequality is grown in the West and in the developed countries, you know, a great amount, especially, you know, since the late 80s, early 90s. And I'd have to say it's all, maybe not all, but, you know, it's a big factor. The fact that we have a global monetary system based on fiat money. And the people who benefit are the speculators, the investors, you know, the rich people who can, you know, work the system. And the poorer people get left behind. And we've got governments lying about the statistics, so to make sure that they don't pay as much welfare, you know, as they're supposed to, because a lot of these welfare payments are indexed to the rising cost of living or inflation. So they lie about it. Instead of, you know, increasing welfare payments by 5%, they only increase it by 1%. So yeah, that's why there's an inequality, Mr. Corbyn. What we need to do, and that goes for Theresa May, the Prime Minister as well, the head of the you know, Conservative Party. That goes to all the politicians. If you want to really fight inequality, first you need a fair monetary system, a sound monetary system, where workers are protected. You know, the income they earn is protected against debasement of the currency. And then they might start, you know, saving and becoming wealthier. And maybe then the inequality, wealth inequality will, you know, the gap will close, and hopefully all the wealth will go up as well, and it won't be like the Labour, the socialists want to do, which is bring down the wealthy and make everyone more miserable, like Margaret Thatcher said. So if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up, share it far and wide. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, please do. If you'd like to donate to my channel, there's some links below in the description. And I'll talk to you later. Take care. Bye.